Good evening. I'm Suze Cooper. Welcome to VoiceWorks. This is where we are telling you all about voice technology, all kinds of different things from Alexa to Google Assistant to how it might touch your business, your marketing and your life in future. I'm here this evening with co-host Peter Stewart. Here he is.
Hello, welcome to our episode. We haven't been around for a couple of days, partly because we were at an event yesterday evening at Amazon HQ in London, and we're going to be spending certainly today and tomorrow, Thursday, talking about that. Friday, of course, is Flash Briefing Friday, so we'll talk about flash briefings then, and then we'll continue next week with some more thoughts about what happened last night at the event. And Andrea Mattoni was the first speaker up, talking about a couple of things, talking about situational design and also monetization as well. So we're going to give you a quick review over the next 10-15 minutes or so about what Andrea had to say at the meeting last night. It was certainly a packed room, wasn't it? I would say there was well over 100 people there, and they say that it was their most well-attended session that they've had there from the UX Crunch.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is at @TechCircus_ if you want to follow them on Twitter. They organise the UX Crunch, and their meetings are really quite frequent and all kinds of different topics. I think 260 people had signed up on Meetup last night saying they were going, and I reckon you're right, Peter, probably about 150, maybe pushing 200 people were there last night. It was a packed room, but there was a great lineup of speakers as well. And as you say, Andrea kicked it all off from Amazon. He's a senior design architect, I believe, and Alexa champion and evangelist from Amazon. We have heard him speak before, haven't we? But I think last night we heard some new stuff from him, really, certainly in the realms of monetization and the in-skill purchasing stuff that he was covering. And it's such a hot topic at the moment because people are building skills and are now able to start to make a little bit of money out of it. So I think it is certainly something people are very, very interested in.
Absolutely. And he had three basic tenets that he started off talking about, which are always worth bearing in mind, I think, whenever you're doing something like this with voice, because sometimes it's, I think, perhaps very easy to go headlong into something without thinking why you're doing it. And what the reason is you're doing it and who you're doing it for, essentially. So it's very easy to always think, oh, it's voice. It's the way forward. It's the one and only. It's the greatest thing. No. Voice first, but not voice always. Number one, choose voice when something is easier than doing it on an app or the web. So number one, easier. Number two, when it's faster than doing something on the app and web, even if it's easier to do it on the app and web. So they don't necessarily always match up. And also if it's more natural, because people don't need to know about where all the buttons are and what you press and so on. But if it's easier and faster, or easier or faster, or more natural, then you need to perhaps think about voice. Don't just go headlong designing something for voice if it doesn't fit one or more of those criteria. Otherwise, it is bound to fail because there'll be no user need for that. And then he was talking about, as I say, about monetization and so on, saying that there are lots of Alexa-enabled devices, around about 30,000 different products around the world which have got Alexa built in, and around about 90,000 different skills around the world. Rather fewer here in the UK, because it still is rather annoying when you know of a fantastic skill or an award-winning skill that you hear about maybe in the United States, and they don't make it available over here. Now, sometimes that could be because of rights reasons or copyright reasons, but other times you just think to yourself, why are you limiting the people that can get involved with that and download it and learn from you? Because after all, it is multinational as far as those 5 English-speaking territories go. To just limit it to one particular territory of those potential 5 seems to me a bit of a lost opportunity. So Suze will speak about situational design in a few moments' time, because that's more of her kind of area. But also, Andrea was talking about Amazon Pay and in-skill purchasing, and drew to our attention the differences between those two different areas. So Amazon Pay for Alexa skills is when you've actually got a real life tangible thing that you can have and you can hold and you can eat or you can use. So these are physical goods for brands selling those. So there could be tickets, for example, train tickets, or it could be food. So some of the more perhaps traditional uses of Amazon. Amazon will take 30% of that of the amount of money you get, but of course in return you do get the marketplace, so you've always got to kind of balance up whether or not it's worth it for you. Get the exposure, you perhaps sell more arguably, but you give more away, but then you're not paying for a bricks and mortar store, so you've obviously got to do your budgets and work out whether that is good for you. And the second one was the in-skill purchasing that he was talking about. So these are things that you might encourage somebody to buy when they're using your skill to enrich not their lives, but to enrich their use of your skill. So, for example, these could be things like subscriptions, premium content, one-time purchases, access for life, things like that, or consumables. Maybe they're in a game and they want to buy more coins or levels or get more help or advice and things like that. So Amazon Pay and then the in-skill purchasing is divided into two. So the subscriptions and so on, but also things like donations to mentioned the British Heart Foundation, for example, so you can give donations to something like that. So I thought that was Sue's really interesting. Again, what he said, we have heard him talk about these kinds of things before, but it's really interesting to hear it said again and in a larger audience, some slightly different examples. Went probably into a little bit more depth than Andrea has done before, but it's always good, isn't it, when you're new to a topic, you're new to a subject or a platform, to hear things being said 2 or 3 different times or 2 or 3 different ways, maybe by 2 or 3 different people, because then it helps you remember, understand and use it, and to be able to utilize that kind of knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, because this was a UX event, he was very much speaking about it from the point of view of the user experience. You know, he was speaking about how when you want to pay for something within a skill using Amazon Pay, you'll be taken out of that skill to use the Amazon Pay kind of API and all of the gubbins that goes with that. So you've got all the security, taking people's card details, all that kind of thing. But then the designer has to consider that the user has to then come back into the skill after that to finish off their experience. So I think from a user experience point of view and from a designer point of view, it's thinking about how we can incorporate this Amazon Pay or in-skill purchasing so that it doesn't interrupt the flow of what's actually going on, and so that it is an appropriate point and moment within the skill. And I think that will be the true test and skill of designers as to whether or not users feel like it's an inconvenience or a kind of a tap on the shoulder in the wrong place. The issue with this is, as you said, you know, this kind of voice scenario should feel more natural. So it will very, very quickly become apparent if it doesn't feel natural, and people will turn away from it if it feels like it's intruding on what they're doing, I think. So effectively, this is all about situational design, where Andrea was kind of presenting this as an idea. He's saying it's an experiment. He's saying this isn't the way he's telling designers to design something. He actually wants people to go away, try out this idea that he's come up with, and then give him lots of feedback on it as to whether or not it's useful, whether it's a usable scenario, and to explain a little bit about what it is. So if you consider that a tree diagram might be used to design a conversation where you've got a yes no answer, perhaps, so a question, and then the tree branches down from the question to yes and no, and then perhaps another question branches down again to yes and no. He was trying to explain that wide top level UI kind of prevents the user from continuing until they're satisfied. And you can't do that with voice, because you can satisfy the intentions of the user without needing that specific flow. You should be the skill should be designed in such a way that it can take on whatever somebody might actually say and actually produce a relevant result to that. And that's the skill of designing it. Now, you might be thinking, there are hundreds of thousands of different ways that a conversation might go. And this was where we were actually speaking about the error path a little bit later in the evening, and how designers actually have to think an awful lot about where it might go wrong and where people might actually say something that the skill's not expecting, and how the skill then deals with that, and how the Alexa voice then deals with that and comes back to you. So this situational design is effectively, he calls it like a deck of cards, and he calls each situation a card and a turn. So you start out with an utterance, which is what will be said to initiate the experience, the situation that utterance is leading to, the response that Alexa is then expected to give, and the prompt at the end. And that is all one interaction and one card. Now, rather than then drawing a line and branching that off into something else, you then draw another card for another utterance. So you might start the skill by saying, Alexa, I want to book a movie ticket. And you will write down the situation for that and the response that will happen with that. However, you might say, Alexa, where is this film on at the nearest cinema? And that would be a completely separate card, rather than trying to branch that off of the initial scenario. Because what then happens if you do that branching off from that initial scenario is that people get lost in the flow, and the code has moved on beyond that, and the user then can't get back to the point where they can ask their question, because it's moved on beyond that. The coding behind these skills is generally JavaScript, and it's basically running through the instructions top to bottom in a list, just as code does. So once you've gone beyond the path where you might have had the opportunity to ask that question, it's very difficult to get you back into it without starting the skill all over again. So the idea of this situational design is that each card is a different situation, and that a designer actually starts out designing the experience from these cards, in the hope that it then gives a better experience for the user.
If you do design it in the kind of old-fashioned way, what you're doing is you're forcing people to go down routes, down channels, down workflows every single time. And it was likened to some of the telephone trees when you're getting through to maybe a hospital or booking cinema tickets or something, and you know full well that you press number 3 on the first prompt, and number 5 on the next one, and number 1 on the next, but you can't go straight to where you want to on that third section. You've got to go through all of those. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, and it's wasting time and it's causing frustration. Whereas with the situation that Andrea was outlining, and which Sue's explained expertly there, you can jump straight to the bit that you want. It's much easier to design, and it's much easier for someone to use as well.
Yeah, I mean, as you're saying there, you also can't go back. And I think that's the thing. You can't take a step back and revert back down a different route. So I think, one of the things, I actually wrote it down as a quote that Andrea had said at the beginning of the talk: the technology should adapt to you, say what you need, and things will happen. So it shouldn't be that the user is trying to work out how to get the tech to give the information that they want. It should be designed in such a way that no matter what the iteration is, it will bring back, no matter where you are in that skill, it will bring back the response that you're needing and wanting at that moment.
Okay, thanks very much indeed for watching. Sorry, we had a few technical problems this evening in tonight's episode. I mean, we were a little bit late coming on, and then we had some more technical problems while we were on as well. So apologies for that. However, we will be back at a similar time tomorrow. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about what Ben Sawyer had to say, because he was from Babylon Health. Now, we've been to a couple of presentations, haven't we, Suze, from people from Babylon Health. Emily, we heard a couple of 3 weeks ago. And there's some really interesting stuff that they are doing, some really intriguing, and they are kind of I don't like to use a bit of a cliche, but breaking the mold. Let's put it this way. Ben had to apologize about what he said, what he was saying
a few times.
Amazon several times, because he wasn't being nasty, he wasn't being unpleasant, but he was actually raising several really good points. And one of the comments that he said is that voice is the most error-prone tech because of noise and you know what, I don't want to give away too much from tomorrow when we'll come back. And he complained about the lack of standardization, because you've obviously got Google and you've got Amazon and you've got Bixby and you've got Cortana and you've got Siri and you've got SoundHound and all the rest of them using different names for similar things. And those things are similar, but they're not the same. And it's really, really awkward, perhaps for the whole market, for the whole platform to develop. And also he had lots to say about how it's going to become so annoying in the not too distant future when people want to communicate with your brand by voice and they can't.
Yeah, it was a really good lineup last night, and I can't wait to talk more about Ben's talk tomorrow on the VoiceWorks Facebook page.
Okay, so we've got a couple of things to tell you about. Well, the main one is that Suze and I are going to be performing together. Suze, you better say whereabouts that is. And
so we will be speaking at Amazon HQ in London in Worship Street on July the 16th. The idea is an introduction to voice technology. So if you've heard about voice tech, you keep hearing about it, it's going to be the next big thing, it's already here, all of those kind of phrases, but you're not quite sure how you can leverage it for yourself or for your business or brand, then this is the event for you. We're not going to baffle, we're not going to bamboozle or befuddle you. We are literally there to tell you what we have learned over the last few months. And it really has been the last few months where it's accelerated to such a level that so many people are now interested and involved in this, that there's so much out there to educate other people about. And so I'm looking forward to it being a really exciting event. We're certainly not planning the usual sit in your seats and listen to us for 2 or 3 hours event. We're going to want everybody to get involved. We're going to be asking you questions, and we want to hear your questions. No question will be too daft. It is completely free. So do come along, come and meet us, come and join us, come and ask us questions, come and find out about voice technology. I'll post the link to the Eventbrite. You do need to sign up so we know for numbers, and I'll post that after this episode.
And also, even though it's going to be at that place that Suze just mentioned, we're not just talking about that particular brand. We're going to be talking about all of them. So whether it be Amazon or Google or Apple or Samsung or Microsoft or some of the other players as well that you could use, we're going to be talking about them as well. So we've just got a place to be, a roof over our head, and teas and coffees and biscuits and that kind of thing. So that's what our hosts are providing, but we're talking about all those different brands as well. So that's about it. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thanks for a load of your ears. We'll be back in about 24 hours with more. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.